Welcome to the Organic Wine Podcast. I'm Adam Huss, coming to you from Los Angeles, California. Thanks so much for listening. The sponsor for this episode is Centralis Wine. Centralis is an ecological winery that I started to protect or benefit the environment and my community with every business and winemaking decision. I envision a wine world in which humans are the students and servants of the non-human world, regenerating and protecting the vitality of ecosystems and promoting the diversity of life through wines that uniquely and deliciously reflect local abundance. Centralis wines feature foraged prickly pears, urban perennial polyculture wine garden produced grapes and other fruit, gleanings from urban fruit trees, dry farmed century-old vines, and organic and biodynamic viticulture. If this sounds interesting to you, join our email list or wine club at centraliswine.com. That's CENTRALAS wine.com. My guests for this episode are the father and son team Doug and Andrew Becker of Montpelier Vineyards in Montpelier, Vermont. Montpelier Vineyards is currently the only certified organic winery north of the Mason-Dixon line that I'm aware of, though there may be more in the process and soon to be certified. As a quick clarification, a certified organic winery must have two certifications, one for the vineyard and one for the winery. There are definitely other certified vineyards in New England, but only Montpelier Vineyards has both vineyard and winery certifications. Doug and Andrew tell us their story, and we get technical about some of the challenges of Vermont viticulture, as well as how to deal with VA and reduction in the winery. There are some really helpful tidbits here that could help wine growers and winemakers everywhere. Doug and Andrew may introduce you to some new terminology as well, because in addition to grape wines, they make pyments, cysers, and melomels, and discuss the practice of bletting apples. We also discuss the particular hybrid grapes that they're growing and the pros and cons. They are one of the few growers of a new hybrid grape named Petite Pearl that shows a lot of promise. And in fact, they sent me a bottle of their Montpelier Vineyards 2021 wild fermented Petite Pearl that we discussed in the interview. And since this was recorded a few weeks ago, I've had a chance to try it. The color is the first remarkable aspect of this wine. Inky, opaque purple, tinged magenta at the rim, extremely dark. After swirling in the glass, the legs oozed down almost as dark as the wine itself. It smelled initially of blue fruit, snowy mountain air, strangely, grape jelly, and a bit of cocoa powder. It is extremely fresh, still young, while also rich and full-bodied. It achieves that deft feat of having significant weight, even I would say gravitas, without an ounce of heaviness. Only 12.5% alcohol. The closest association I can make to something you might have drunk is along the lines of the black wines of Cahors or something like a varietal Tannat or Tirol-de-Go. After a couple days in the refrigerator, it opened up and became even more chocolatey and creamier in texture. So while this was a delight to drink now, I think it will age very well and improve for quite a while. I've never done tasting notes like this before, so I hope that speaks for itself. I loved drinking this wine, and I think that it shows that the future of wine made from hybrid grapes is extremely bright, and that's not a climate change joke. So get some if you can. Petite Pearl was bred by Tom Plocker, who I mispronounce as Plotcher in this interview, and he's going to be the subject of a future episode about how to breed grapes, so stay tuned. For now, let's take a trip to Vermont, where it seems like wine in a beautiful diversity of innumerable flavors and forms is really blowing up. Enjoy. Hey, Andrew, Doug, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for doing this. And thanks for, spending your cocktail hour on a Friday night to do this.
Yeah,
I really
thanks
appreciate
for having
that.
us on.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. And I know it's going to be tough with the two of you. I'm just thinking out loud now. So feel free to, if you want to alternate on it, maybe you guys have already worked out how you want to respond to things, but however you want to do
We
it
have not done
is
that.
fine.
No.
We'll figure something out.
We've
Okay.
known each other for quite some time, so
Yeah, we are related.
Oh, really? How do you know each other?
so Doug is my dad, and yes.
And where you? So yeah, I mean, what do you guys? Who are you guys? Where do you guys come from? What do you?
Okay,
Why are we talking?
So we originally we lived in Michigan, Port Huron, Michigan. That's where I grew up. That was my hometown, and we moved to Vermont in 1997. And I took a job for New England Culinary Institute as a chef instructor. And at any rate, we at that time we were able to buy this property, and it was in the city of Montpelier, in the town of Montpelier, which is the capital of Vermont. And we had we've got about 21 acres, just about 22 acres here. Most of it is not farmable. It's like hillside and just like yeah, it's not.
It's forest land. It's mostly forest land.
Yeah. It's great for hiking.
Yeah.
And mushroom hunting.
Beautiful.
So yeah.
Oh,
But at any rate,
definitely.
so we had a in the back of our house. If you look at the back windows, there was this nice south-facing hill. It had trees on either side, but it was always cleared. There was never like trees growing on it. We didn't do anything to it. But I decided back in like 2008, I started thinking about what am I going to do when I retire? And so at any rate, we decided to put in a vineyard. So, yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do a vineyard, everything we did here was organic. My wife always had a nice big garden. She still does. We've got 2 hoop houses. One's just like full of peppers. One's full of tomatoes, and then we have a big garden full of everything else. And we put a lot of food away in the fall, and throughout the year. Plus, we have apple trees. We have got raspberries, blueberries. Oh my gosh, blueberries are just coming in too. Yeah.
Nice.
So anyway, so we had the.
So how old was Andrew when you were thinking in 2008, or when you
I would have
been
in 2008 would have been summer between 7th and 8th grade. So I was like in middle school. I would have been 15-ish. Yeah,
old enough to help out.
I ended up doing quite a bit of work for.
Was that like just old enough to be exploited, actually, for a lot of free labor?
I mean, I was a pretty good advocate for myself and would require an hour.
Okay.
I was
good.
Stuff.
Yeah, I hired Andrew and his friend one summer to help dig the holes for the trellis posts. And so they did that, and they took a lot of breaks, but
it was also like 100-degree day,
Yeah.
It wasn't exactly easy for manual labor.
Yeah.
Does it get that hot in Vermont?
Rarely.
You just picked the right day, huh? Well, okay. So, and now, I mean, I'm fast forwarding because there's a lot of questions I have for you, but I want to give the sort of full picture. You now have a winery known as Montpelier Vineyards, right? And that winery, in addition to your vineyard, is certified organic, if I'm right. Okay, so you're. I don't know anybody else in north of the Mason-Dixon line actually that is a certified winery and vineyard.
No,
are there?
Not that we know.
Are there any? I didn't think. Okay, I didn't think so.
And the issue is that nearly everybody who has tried has been unsuccessful. Has after about the 3rd year of organic practices has faced repeated declining yields.
Right. And why would you say that is?
The prevailing theory that we have is it's due to a buildup of fungus just in the area. It's
now, are they? I mean, but why?
Pressure.
Why is?
Sorry, a lot of times too, they have the wrong varieties to begin with, and so
that's what I was wondering.
That's difficult.
I mean, it's
and we started out.
I mean, you made it longer. So what's your secret?
This is the idea was it was an experimental vineyard, and so I started out with 4 varieties. In 2009, and then I put in 5 varieties in 2010, and in 2011 I put 2 more varieties in, and so I was putting more varieties in as they came out, and some of them were like brand new. Like when the Petite Pearl came out, I think it was 2011 that I actually put that in, but it would just I had already taken out several other varieties that just didn't do well. And so I had because originally I had Marquette, I had Prairie Star, St. Croix, Adelmina, Edelweiss, all those, and I pulled them out because I just couldn't grow them. And, that said,
Huh.
I
Okay.
think today, with what I know and some of my practices as my sprays and so on, I probably could grow them better, but they would never do as good. I don't know if it's just my site, but this Petit Pearl is just flawless. Uh, yeah,
Loves it. Okay. So, and when you say come out, I just want to frame this for people who are listening and give the context. So, you're literally, as we're speaking, there are universities and breeders working on new varieties of grapes, and you were basically keeping an eye on this. And Petit Pearl basically was released after being trialed, like
sure.
after being bred and developed as this hybrid thing. And then I think University of Minnesota is who released it? No, I'm
Right.
totally wrong.
Tom Plotcher.
You
Yeah.
can tell me
Yeah.
about it. Tom
Yeah.
Plotcher, right? Who is a name that probably anybody who wants to work with hybrids
Absolutely.
should know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay, great. So, I mean, I love that process of trialing. I mean, that just seems like a great process. I love the idea of a process. I think when you come in with that experimental mindset, it sounds like, which sounds like you did, then you don't have the same sort of maybe investment, or your business plan incorporates this idea that there will be attrition and then
Right.
replacement, and that there is a idea of ongoing refinement and adaptation to the site and to the needs of
Well,
that
I don't.
environment,
At
that
the
microenvironment
beginning,
where you
I
are.
didn't really even think I was going to build a winery and go get certified organic. All really, because my yields were pretty low, and really wasn't didn't have that much product. But then I think it was in, I don't know, 2016. I had like this bumper crop, and I had so much wine, and it was really good. And so I'm just like, what am I going to do? And Andrew's like, Dad, you just need to do it. You just need to get yourself
Yeah.
certified and get your business registered and start selling wine. We had a tasting. It was like a blind tasting here at my house, and we invited probably there was at least 10 people there. Andrew ran the tasting. Nobody knew what the wine was, and we had uh, two or three Vermont wines that were that they were selling locally. One or certified organic California wine. There was at least five different wines, and so we did the whole tasting. Andrew figured the whole thing out, and my Petit Pearl came out as the number one wine, and I was so surprised because I just thought, how could this wine be better than all these, all this other stuff that's been out there? And at that point, we said we just have to go with this. So, yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah, and I saw the write up by Elaine Chuck and Brown that was really complimentary of both both your still red, but also
yeah,
a
the sparkling
sparkling, a brut
rosé, the
sparkling
method champenois.
rosé, I believe. I mean it. I mean, it also, I mean, she was reviewing really like from some very well known producers in your area. And those two came out on top points wise from her evaluation, or from whoever the evaluator was for that periodical that she was writing for. So, again, props for that. Like it's not only thrives in your site, and maybe that's why it does so well, but it not only thrives, but it's
Yeah,
you're making some good wine
yeah,
with
we,
it
we were
too. So
thrilled,
that's
and
really cool. Well,
actually, the wine that she tried was the 2020, which was really good, but was a little acidic. The 2021 is the one that it's young, but it is so nice right now. So
Oh, so the one that she thought was
no,
the best is not
no,
even as good as
Yeah.
it could be, is what you're
So
saying.
that was the
I
year
love that.
where we had like a hard frost in September, and we had to harvest early.
yeah, it was
Um,
mid-September.
yeah, it
Got it.
was
Yeah.
also that was a drought year as well, which really
Oh, so it's like a double
and
whammy.
there's the question of whether like the drought improved the flavor or not.
Mm,
Um, it definitely didn't
right.
improve yields. We were about 50% down from the year before, but
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was.
Well, there's I mean, there is that thought that lower yields equals higher quality, which I think has been disproved. But some people hearing that would be like, that's why the quality was
I'm
good, was
Well,
because
I
your
did leaf
yields were
picking
lower.
that year. Everything, all the fruit was exposed, so it had everything going for it. But we just had to harvest mid-September, and so it had not,
Right.
it did not have as much high bricks numbers, and that made it difficult. So
yeah.
Got it. Well, I mean, maybe I think that's winemaking, right? Like that's wine. Each vintage is tells a different story, and I think the beautiful thing is like there's probably a person on earth for whom that would be the best expression of the wine. Like some people have a stylistic preference
hmm
for that leaner, more acid driven style, and others like the more robust, fruity style, lower acid style. Um, which but I think it's that variation is something that's really cool, which I may be just jealous of because I live in a place where it's very little variation. It's very easy to you get to pick rather than have to respond to nature. You get to decide when to pick as opposed
right,
to being
I
forced to
see.
pick at any point out
hmm
here a lot of times. And so yeah, like it's less a reflection sometimes of the year and more just a
Yeah,
reflection of
yeah.
your
Even in
decision, your intention.
2021, we had a whole crew coming over, and it was raining. It was like 60 degrees, and we're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, we have to harvest. This is our last opportunity, and so we did.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, and it stopped raining, but
Yeah.
still, the grapes were wet.
Right. So how you it's not a huge vineyard, right? Can you talk about how big it is and what you have planted
Yeah,
besides
so
Petit Pearl?
it's half an acre, and I have it spaced out 6 foot between the vines and 10 foot between the rows. And so right now we've got the Itasca. We just put Itasca in, and it's a little bit hard to grow, but it's a nice white, and it's just super vigorous. We've got, let's
Okay.
see, the Sabravois, which is a red grape. It doesn't make the best wine, but it makes a really nice mead. We have the Frontenac.
Okay.
We have all three Frontenac. There's Frontenac, uh, just for regular Frontenac is the red, and I use that for
Right.
my sparkling rosé. And then we have
Okay.
Louis Swinson, which is another great grape. Takes forever to grow to get started, but it is just a great tasting grape. Um, and then, like I said, also the other two varieties of Frontenac would be the Frontenac Blanc, which super lots of high sugar, and it also goes into my sparkling wine, and the
Okay.
Frontenac Gris, which I put that into my sparkling rosé. So, and then the Petite Pearl, and
Got it.
that's my big one. It's my Petite Pearl. I have more of that than anything else planted. But we are starting another vineyard and on Andrew's property. Andrew has a farm as well, and we started by planting
Okay.
the
Louis
Louis Swinson.
because it takes the longest.
Yeah,
So
Oh.
that.
Oh, got it. So you might as well
Yeah.
yeah.
get it
And,
going,
and
right?
we have three
um
Prairie Stars, right? Down at the
Oh, that's actually just two. Yeah, it's just on two Prairie Star on the windmill. So,
yeah.
oh, those are
well,
just
I had
individual
I had
vines.
removed them
What are
from the
they?
vineyard, and I said, well, I'll just plant them over here. I was trying to give them away, but so I planted them next to my windmill.
They weren't doing
Yeah,
well.
they just took an awful long time to start really producing, and they were not
Okay.
doing as well as other
So
things.
and now?
Oh, they're doing
And
great,
now?
actually. They're a wonderful grape. They're really
Oh.
tasty.
Was it is it
I'd like to put
is
more of that back in now,
Oh,
but
nice. Is it I mean, did they just need to be neglected a little bit or
maybe
well,
so. They're in a terrible
or
spot.
just
So,
patience? There you go.
uh,
um that's great. I wonder, I just want to calibrate um everybody's listeners because when we talked a little bit, you mentioned something like low acid, and then I kind of went and looked about Petite Pearl, and I went online and I was like, to most people in California that would be considered high acid. And I just think like there's I began I'm wondering if there's a little bit of a different calibration to our measurements and what we think is low and high
Yeah.
because of what you guys get used to and what we get used to. But can you talk specific numbers about where some of these things come in, like Petite Pearl? Do you know, like the
Yeah,
bricks
usually the
that you would
bricks is
harvest in
around
the
21,
pH or PA?
22. The
Uh-huh.
pH. Now, I just bought a pH meter. I never had one because I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter because I can't do anything about it anyway. So I would never test
Right,
anything. But
right.
I did buy a pH meter, and it came out at I believe it's 3.4 pH.
Okay. And that
Yeah,
was finished in the
yeah.
wine, the finished wine? Okay. Yeah, see, that would be on the lower side, I would say, for, I mean, like a California red, I think the range would probably be, 3.6 to
Hmm.
3.9 kind
Yeah,
of area. So yeah, I'd say it's a
yeah,
significantly lower thing, but in relative to some of the other hybrids, that's a
Yeah.
that's a good
yeah.
acid level.
Yeah.
That's lower than, I mean, it's a higher pH,
So
lower acid level.
the like
Um,
defining characteristic of like the different hybrid grapes that are like coming in here, the primary one that gives like very very good cold hardiness is Vitis riparia, which
right,
is, if you've ever had wild
right.
Vitis riparia, it will burn your tongue with acid. No, seriously, like I've known people who have like
Okay. Yeah.
eaten a handful of those grapes and been like, I couldn't eat anything for besides like soup for a couple days because my tongue was just like burnt off.
So it's like eating
It
hydrochloric
is.
acid or something, like taking a shot of hydrochloric. Well, okay, so I have not, but I did interview somebody who's growing a whole vineyard of Riparia, wild Riparia that they've just propagated into a vineyard, but they pulled from like a couple feet away along a riverbank, and they're doing it in North Dakota. And his secret is he lets the first heavy frost hit the grapes
They're
before
also
harvesting,
yeah.
and
They're
that
also known as frost
okay,
grapes.
you've heard
Yeah,
of
where
this,
they're edible after a hard frost because yeah.
right? So, and this is probably an adaptation. Like this is probably something that the grapes have evolved to do
Yeah,
over time, I
I'd imagine
imagine.
that it's something where it avoids birds eating them for quite some time, and then when there's scarce food after the first hard frost, they become a very much so like a
Like
high
the only,
quality forage.
yeah,
Um,
the right, the last juicy thing around. Interesting, yeah. Well, so what are the treatments like? What do you have to think about with the climate that you have there in Vermont? Like, what
So typically,
tell a
so
California
what?
boy, like,
Yeah, yeah. So
blow
what
my mind.
we've been doing is if we have a lot of if there's the year before, if there's we've had a lot of rot and a lot of black rot or just a lot of pressure, we do a dormant spray of lime sulfur. So usually I do that in, I don't
Okay.
know, March, April, and so that takes care of pretty much anything that's gonna that would stay on the vines and it'd be a problem for the next year. At any rate, and then as far as the sprays that I use, I'm just using stylet oil and
Hmm.
mixing that with some of the, oh shoot, what's the name of that? Um, Lifeguard. So and and
Okay.
and I've had a lot of success so far. I used to when I first started. I mean, I sprayed everything that was available organically. I used to do Bordeaux mix,
Yeah.
like 3 times Bordeaux mix, but I get a lot of burn on my leaves, and it just didn't work. I don't use sulfur because some of the vines, they just they can't take the sulfur, so I don't use that after we have any green, any leaves.
Mm.
But that's all I've been doing.
Oh
And
wow.
then
Okay.
bugs, I just pick the bugs off. A lot of people put surround, that kind of thing on, but I haven't had to do that. I just figure it sort of
Yeah.
opens up the canopy and gets more sun on the grapes. So, and I do pick a lot of them off, but usually
And when you say bugs, are you talking
Japanese
about
beetles,
the
yeah,
beetles, the Japanese
yeah,
beetles? Yeah, because they'll defoliate, right? They're sort of
Yeah,
munching on the
but they're
leaves.
not. Once the vines are established, it's really not that much of an issue. So
Got it. So it's actually potentially helping you in a way by it's like doing the
yeah,
leaf thinning for you.
you know,
In a
they tend to choose, leaves that
They
don't
choose
really.
the newest, best leaves,
Yeah, exactly.
oh,
tastiest leaves.
Yeah,
it's not.
but
They're like the novice vineyard worker. It still needs to be trained
right.
where to leaf. If
Yeah.
only you could train them. Well, so black rot. I mean, yeah, is that just a preventative thing when it comes to
Yeah, if
organic
it's
treatments?
there, you're basically relegated to
Yeah. I mean,
picking off what's
And
existing.
so,
And it's sort of a fact of life up here that you're going to get black rot on the grapes at some point in the season, regardless of. Yeah.
is there are there any varieties that are more resistant or completely resistant to it that
well, like I
you're
said,
aware
the
of or
petite
that you're working
pearl.
with?
I mean, you got maybe a little bit of black rot, but not much. It doesn't do much damage. The Louis Swinson
Wow.
and the Adelmina. No, not Adelmina. The Sebrevois. Those three. The Sebrevois is like
Oh,
bulletproof. I mean, you wouldn't have to do anything to that. Um, yeah,
wow.
but then it doesn't
But it
make
doesn't
the
make great
best
wine.
wine.
That's the issue.
So it
It
doesn't
doesn't
have
Say
make
that again?
Go ahead, Andrew.
it doesn't make great wine. It there's a history of tasting sort of like bacon. Uh,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
if
interesting.
you like let it ripen a little bit too far past like 19, 20 bricks, it gets what do they call it, the bacon taint that is uh characteristic to
Wow.
Sevres.
Yeah.
Huh. Bacon taint. That is a new one for me. I
It's
love that.
some tannin compound that the late in ripening they produce.
That's amazing. All right. Well, let's talk a bit more in detail about Petite Pearl. What are some of the
Well,
characteristics? I mean, sounds like a lot of good stuff. I think this is. I mean, from what you've said, I'm really excited about it as a potential
yeah,
thing to
I
plant
just
around
I have
more
had so much
widely.
success with it, and like I was saying, the side by side tastings, it just always comes out on top. I've been doing um, some wine tastings at some of my purveyors, and they all people are just buying it. They're just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. But it is low in acid. Another good thing about the Petite Pearl is it buds out late, so you miss the spring frost. Um, it's just easy to grow. It's really uh, it, it it just fills in real quick. I mean, you can just take a stick and but just stick it in the ground and it'll just grow. It's so easy. I mean, that's true
Wow.
with most of them anyway, but this one, it's really easy to grow. And besides the
Is
fact
it
that
a
the
is it
the
very vigorous?
Japanese beetles really like it best, it's great. So, uh-huh. Oh yeah,
It is their
yeah,
favorite.
yeah, it's tasty.
Okay.
It's also very vigorous, so it sort of like
Maybe the
pulls the Japanese beetles away from some of the other plants. If you have like a highly
oh,
vigorous, so
interesting.
I have like a 2,000 raspberry plants, and I have two varieties. One of them more vigorous than the other, and all of the bugs go for that one, and it's great. Yeah,
Huh.
yeah. Uh,
Interesting. Do you think that's mainly why they're attracted to it? Something about
um,
that extra vigor?
I'm
There's
I'm not
more.
sure. I think it's
Yeah. Good to know. Yeah.
probably like something to do with like the particular compounds that the leaves produce. I would imagine.
Do
I don't know.
those? Do you like the?
I don't know if
Oh,
there's
sorry.
been
Go ahead.
any studies done on it or anything, but there.
Yeah. Do you know if those or how do you favor those berries
No, the
over the
other
other
ones are better.
raspberries? Oh, okay. Well, that's there screws my theory. I was going to say we should see which grapes the beetles eat, and that's maybe the better grapes. Maybe they know the better tasting grapes. Um,
Well, I mean, that is the case. But we talked
well,
about that Sabre-Voir because they won't even land on that. If they do, it's sort of like, wow, what's with that? So,
okay. Well,
yeah,
maybe they do have something. Maybe they do know then. That's
And
that's fun. Well, you guys are making
Oh,
more. Go
I
ahead,
just
Andrew.
wanted to
Sorry.
sort of rep the actual wine itself. We've talked about like the plant, you know,
Oh yeah, the grape
but
plant.
it's
Yeah.
the darkest wine I've ever seen in my life. It will stain
Wow.
your glasses. Just
Okay.
it when it is like crystal clear, you know, like a crystal clear, perfectly, not any hint of opaqueness. You cannot see through a glass of this stuff. It's so dark.
Right. It's
It's
not
just
cloudy. It's not like
it's black.
sedimentary. It's
Yeah,
just
it's so
color.
it's
Wow.
extremely fruity. It's extremely drinkable, you know, for like so the thing about hybrid wines and Vermont wines in Vermont is they've gotten the reputation for not being good over the past 30,
Yeah.
40 years. So it's really
It's not just for Vermont. Don't feel bad. Don't take it personally.
um and it's good. That's the thing, you know. It makes wine that
Yeah.
is
It actually is good.
as what we were at the time, novices. That is very easy to make, hard to mess up, and tastes very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. And um, you are making some other really interesting things as well. It sounds like somebody in the family
Uh,
likes bees. Is anybody
I
who
I love bees. I just we do mead,
don't?
but the big so we mostly so Vermont hybrid grapes are acidic, right? There are like two
Got it.
things
Yeah.
that
I,
really help with acidity: sweetness and sparkling, right? If you have something that's a little acidic, you give it a
yes.
sparkle, it's going to be great. If you have something that's a little acidic, you make a dessert wine, it's going to, those are going to balance each other out. Um, and
Yep.
I started making wine probably when I was 19. Just,
17, Andrew.
yeah, something like
Too young.
too young. And
That's the
yeah,
perfect age.
and
Come
one
on.
of the first things I made was my mother had gotten a bunch of elderberries from a friend, and I had heard about elderberry mead, and I had some honey from another friend, and I made a few gallons of elderberry mead. And several years later, I think it was 2017, we had another bumper crop. And
Mm-hmm.
I had asked if I could use the Sabravois to make some mead with it, see how it turns out. If it turns out great, we'll sell it. If it doesn't, we'll drink it. Turned out great, and we decided to just sort of roll with it. Um, and so
Mm.
about like I do love bees. I absolutely wonderful creatures, but I honestly don't know how the people who are making honey in the state of Vermont make money. The prices are so
Uh,
low at bulk that it's like
wow.
3.75 a pound.
Wow. Wow. Don't tell anybody. Uh-oh. Um,
And
that's
I would like have no it just doesn't, from my point of view, it doesn't make sense to so Vermont, I think, is the biggest honey producer in New England already. Something
wow.
like
Huh.
half of all honey in New England. I think Maine is second. They make a lot of blueberry honey. Um, and
Mm. Yeah.
from my point of view, it didn't make sense to like try to bootstrap an existing industry that is already selling it at, like, in some cases, what must be a loss. And I'm absolutely willing to pay more. And I would
Right, right. No, I get you. Yeah, it's you're just speaking from the shock that you can still buy it
yeah,
at
it's
those
like, if you're
prices. I
willing to
get
sell
it.
it to me at this price, like, there's no reason
Then
for
I'm
me
willing to buy it.
to try to keep
Keep
high.
hives and
It-
deal with all of that. Yeah. Okay, great. So you're getting
Yeah.
some
Well,
yeah,
good
what
local
we're
honey
trying to
then.
do is what we do, I should say, is all the grapes that we use in our wine, we grow ourselves. I cannot. Um, I can't buy organic grapes from Vermont. I do have actually do have a friend that has
Right.
a vineyard, and she grows organic grapes, but she's not certified. And
there's
we'll Yeah, we take her
Right.
grapes and we use them for mead because we can't certify the mead organic anyway because the honey we buy is not certified organic.
Because it's impossible to do in the
Right.
Northeast because you have to certify 5 miles around every single hive. And nobody in
Right.
other than the state owns a contiguous tract that large. So
Yeah. But
Right.
any fruit, I mean, we'd forage a lot of
Right.
fruit ourselves, apples and things and pears. But anything we use in the mead or in the different wines we make, it's from Vermont. That's just it has to be. And yeah, just because we
Right.
want to keep it Vermont made 100%. So so that's
Yeah.
sort of been our philosophy going forward with that.
it,
And then with like Andrew said, he planted 2,000 raspberry plants on his property. So that's the start of that raspberry mead that we're going to be making. And then also on his property, he's got choke cherries. Oh my God, choke cherries make wonderful mead.
yeah.
Yeah. Also known
No,
as
that's
aronia, is that right?
choke berries.
That's different. Those are choke
So this
berries. These
is
are choke cherries.
Juniperus
Okay.
virginiana. It is a cherry
Okay.
species, also known as bitterberry. It grows
Ah.
as a tree rather than a bush. Um, it blooms a little bit before
Uh-huh.
aronia, and it produces a little bit before aronia.
Yeah,
We
we
have done
have.
an aronia mead. It's a little rough.
Yeah,
Um,
we still have some bottles in the cellar.
Okay.
It's
Yeah. That's usually a
yeah.
good indication. Yeah. Um, well, and also you're doing, I mean, I just like the idea of, not having to be monolithic, like incorporating, I think, if you incorporate diversity in the beverage, that means you're supporting biodiversity in the world. And, so these things that you guys are doing of these cross pollinations, to use a bad bee pun, is very cool, I think, and very like forward thinking, even though it's probably just super traditional, where people are just looking around them and using what's local and what's available to
Hmm.
turn into these beverages. But I was really excited to see this, the piment. Am I
Yep.
yes.
pronouncing that right?
Hmm.
Piment. Can you talk about what that
Yeah.
is and how you're
So
making that?
it's grapes and honey. It's probably the most
That's
traditional grape beverage that isn't straight up wine, with a history dating back to like the early Greeks, where
right.
like it is a relationship with like the process of chaptalization, right? Which is the idea of adding
Right.
sugar to wine in order to improve certain qualities about it, improve the give it a fuller body, make a stronger wine, or sweeten it, instead of like the concentrating the grape must through boiling. That's another thing that you can do, or through freezing, like, as in an ice wine. Um, but
Right.
all it is you're using like the most available sugar source to Europeans in the prehistory days, and you're adding it to the one thing that one of the two things that they made alcohol out of in those days, which would have been grains or grapes. And
Right.
it's great. It's probably the best thing that we make.
Yeah. It's a wonderful dessert
Oh,
wine,
amazing.
and we brought some to a dinner party, and they were serving chocolate cake, I think, for dessert. And we all had some of the piment, and it was like, oh my gosh, this goes so well. It was just a perfect way to end the evening. But yeah,
What grape are you
yeah.
using in that, or
What are we
grapes?
using?
What grapes?
It varies. So we talked about
Okay.
how we have a friend down in where does she live?
Well,
Middle of nowhere, Vermont, central Vermont. Um,
she's
and
half our way.
yeah, and she maintains a little vineyard that we provide her with the sprays, give her the schedule. If she asks us to come help out with something, we help out with it. Um, uh,
Got it.
and
sort of like passively managing
She
the
wants to
vineyard
do
for
it,
her.
so she can do it.
Yeah, no, her and her husband, and they
Yep.
have, I
Yep.
think they have Marquette, they have Frontenac. I don't know if they have St. Croix, maybe St. Croix too.
They have St. Croix.
Yeah,
They have and then
Okay.
they have a handful of white grapes as
yeah.
well. And this year we took one of the red varietals and made a single varietal like private stock thing for them.
I made a Marquette for her,
Yeah,
Right.
and
and
the
Nice. Yeah.
rest of it, white, red, etc., went into the pyment.
yeah,
So
Got it. Now, so the impression is sweet. Like I see it's in a 375 milliliter bottle rather than the 750. So it's like this is meant to be a dessert
yep,
wine. It's sweet.
yeah, sometimes
Yeah.
we
Okay.
put bar tops on things to indicate that they're really sweet. But that I would
Okay.
say that is very good as is at cellar temperature. It's not like it is not overly sweet. It's not something that I'd say like, oh, you should probably like put this over ice, or maybe you want to add some seltzer with it, because it's almost like candy, like some of these things are.
Right. Syrupy. Yeah.
It's not.
It's not that. It's got it.
It's
It's okay. I
like a
gotcha.
good port.
Is it as light as like a Vouvray or something like that, or is it not that light? Somewhere between
Yeah,
Vouvray and
yeah.
port.
It's like
yeah. I'd be closer to port, I think, but
yeah, I mean it's
Okay. All
the
right.
very
I
interesting
gotcha.
thing that happens with all of the pyments is they smell like port. Aromatically, they within 9 months they get that very characteristic raisiny, grapey, like aged port smell, that aroma. Like and
Right.
may
Well, that go ahead. Well, if you don't mind me jumping in, I have this brings up a question that like I was sort of surprised to learn a little bit about your winemaking when Doug and I were talking. Could you talk about that? What are you using? What are you not using? Is there, I mean, does it
it
depend
depends
on
on
the
the
wine
wine.
and
So we
okay.
find that on a very good year, we can make wild fermented grape wines
yeah,
and have them be excellent.
yeah.
On
I'm still
Uh-huh.
nervous about that to an extent. Yet this past year, we did make a barrel full of the just naturally wild fermented, and it came out awesome. And this year, if the conditions are right and we get the bricks numbers, I'm just going to go totally wild ferment because it just is so nice, and there's no reason to put
Yeah.
yeast into it when it's that good. But
but on a bad
Yeah, when
year,
you
we
do.
get ethyl acetate. We get
Yeah, right, because it doesn't kick off fast enough and then
yeah,
the other
even
things
with
come
a
in.
Pied de Cuvée on a bad year, we'll get significant amounts of
Huh.
ethyl acetate.
mhm.
Interesting. I'm gonna write a article about how to prevent VA very soon.
Yeah,
Actually, it, now is that because you guys aren't using
it
sulfur at all?
plausibly, possibly. No,
Do you
Not a
use
bit.
sulfur at all? Any sulfites meant by
used
sulfur?
them
Not a
like
bit.
once in a mead that just refused to stop fermenting.
But that was more like please stop rather than like you were trying to do anything to
Yeah.
protect it from any
So like
spoilage or
there's
anything like
this
that, right?
sort of thought that like we aren't using we aren't using inoculated like lab grown yeasts in the way they are meant to be used, which is you start with a sterile substrate and you add that,
Right.
and that's what grows. We point the fermentation in the direction of having that like a strong enough initial dosage of yeast that we will avoid that
Right.
volatile acidity.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, yeah,
We do have
and
with the meads,
that
all of the ones that use pomes, use pears or apples, are wild fermented because we don't
uh-huh
have that issue with apples.
with the palm fruit. Wow. Okay. Um, and means that, I don't know if you're doing this with your apples, but with your grape wines, you can say organic
Right.
wine on the label if
Yeah.
that's,
So then,
is
so
that
we
correct?
have,
Because you have the vineyard certified, the winery certified, and zero sulfites equals
exactly.
you
And I
can
mean,
say
it's
organic wine.
still it's sort of difficult with the TTB. You have to, send them all sorts of information and get tests done and all this.
Yes.
But at any rate,
Right.
and so our Petit Pearl, both the Petit Pearl and the wild fermented Petit Pearl are certified organic. And then we have the Method Champenois Rosé and the Method Champenois White that are both also no sulfites and then certified organic. So, and the Method Champenois is not available now. I mean, I have some older stuff that have it on my store, but um, the stuff from the wine, the Method Champenois from 2021 is still aging. So I'm just trying to age it on the lees as long as I can. I like a year or two, but we'll see. So
Yeah. Now, well, I have a couple questions about that. How do you get the re-fermentation in bottle to happen? What do you,
yeah.
what's your
So
tirage?
I use organic sugar. So yep,
Okay.
and
Got it. And
no,
then,
just organic
go ahead,
sugar,
sorry.
and then a type of yeast. And I do use yeast in that method champenois. It's more of a traditional
Okay.
method. Um, I think I could do the initial fermentation, wild ferment, but I haven't done that. I've had a lot of success with this wine, and I don't have a lot of it. We're talking, 5 cases of each. I mean, it's just not a big deal. And so,
Right. Oh yeah, I'm very familiar. I just made 19
oh
bottles
yeah,
of Method Champenois
uh-huh.
from our front yard, from what we call Crenshaw Crew. Um, so are you aging it on? Why do you want it to spend that much time aging? And I'm guessing
Yep,
it's aging
yep,
on lees. You
yep.
haven't disgorged it. So, and what
Well,
does that do for the wine for you?
it just um, it mellows it. It improves it. The age on the lees is going to give you a better quality wine. We found, and that's more the sort of the traditional method once again too, which was the idea when I started doing this. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I really love champagne, and I'm going to do it the champagne method. That was sort of the idea. I couldn't call it champagne, obviously, um, but I just
Right.
called it method champenois, and but I'm sort of
Right.
using the same method.
Cool. that
Right.
was acceptable. That the EU.
Right. I know it's funny, right?
Yeah,
And the other thing, it can
Well,
add like a nuttiness. If you do it too long, it can add this like um, bready, nasty, it's because the yeast autolyzes itself. It eats itself because it's such a low nutrient um, uh, situation. And it
yes.
releases these
Environment.
uh,
Yeah.
sort of savory compounds into the wine, which is for very high end wine champagnes. That's a flavor that it can dominate in some cases.
yeah. So we also do a
Yeah.
co-ferment where so we take all the pumice from the method champenois. So after we press the grapes, we take that pumice and then ferment apple cider on that. So that we do not age as
Mhm.
long. We don't age it on the lees. I mean, it's maybe a month or two, aging on the lees. But that's
Uh-huh.
very popular. We've had fun with that because we can, offer that at a lower price point. Um, because I buy the cider from a wonderful, it's called Windfall Orchards, and then Brad out there at Windfall Orchards has like 100 different types of trees, just amazing variety. And he
Mm.
makes a wonderful blend of cider that we use for that co-ferment. So that's great. And then the rest of the apple, like
Yeah.
we also do the apple mead and the apple pear, and for that we um, harvest apples from our property here uh, in Montpelier, and then also at Andrew's property in Washington, Vermont.
I Last year we had an enormous crop around the property of the wild apples. And I was like doing the math on
Or-
if I were to just go at this 40 hours a week for a month, how many apples would I get? And it ended up being something like 6,000 gallons that I was like
a finished cider.
6,000 gallons of finished cider for 1 month.
You guys would need, you'd need
Yeah.
distribution, I think, at that point.
Obviously, I did not do that, but it was just it was
Now, so is that why? Okay, so I see this thing where it says a pear cyser. So you've got pears and apples.
yeah. We have a
Is that
friend
correct?
who has a
So
few like they're feral pear trees. Really, they're just like haven't been taken care of. So I sort of take it upon myself to go up there and
got
see how
it.
they're doing and poke them if they prune them if they need pruning and whatever else. But yeah.
Okay, nice. Did you notice anything about working with pears that was unique, different from the apples?
They go from not pressable to extremely pressable very, very quickly.
Yeah, very, very short window at sweating. You have to keep like daily tabs
Yes.
on the
With
pears.
apples, they can like.
Got
So we have to, with some of the wild apples, we have to like blet them. Are you familiar with that term? Bletting apples.
I'm no bletting. No,
Bletting.
please tell
So
me.
this is actually relates back to our earlier conversation about the frost grapes. So some apples don't ripen until they've frozen. So
Got it. And
you'd
that's
leave
called
them out,
bletting.
in the garage or outside covered up with a tarp, and let them freeze 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They're just
Got
like
it.
unpressable. They're just like little tiny green rocks that you can't really do anything with. So pears, on
Got
the
it.
other hand, I don't think they have that problem. But some
No.
wild apples, they really prior to that, they're the most acidic little balls of nothing good.
Just
I mean, I'm sure you can
gotcha.
use them. I'm sure you can
Gotcha.
use them, but it's just your juice yields is going to be a quarter, a half of what you could if you like let them go through that process. And it's
Got
like
it.
a
Got
traditional process for dealing with wild apples or like even traditional cider apples. Some of them are required to be blet prior to press. And I
got
mean,
it.
as far as like the fermentation process goes with the pears, I don't think it didn't seem much different than the apples.
Not
Um,
really.
and I
Okay.
think
Okay. Okay.
if there is something different that occurs that you're familiar with, it may have been confounded by the fact that we add, 4 to 5 pounds per gallon
The
of
apples. Right.
honey. Yeah.
Of honey. Okay. Okay. Got it. All right. Um, I love the use of honey. So since we've talked about piment, can you talk about melomel? I see you have this wild
So
cherry
okay,
melomel as
the
well.
the terminology of mead is the best mashup of anachronistic Greek, Latin, and like non-language origins, right? So people will
Right.
like the term piment is traditional. The term melomel might be, or it may have been invented in the 70s.
Gotcha.
All it means is mead with fruit. And
Okay.
there are like all sorts of like interesting ones that people have come up with, like thalidomel, which is like a modern name for a traditional mead made with seawater from Greece. And I'm pretty sure that the name is just like somebody in the U.S. was like, okay, well, we're calling them Mal, and the C in Greek
Right.
is Thalissima, so slap them together, and well, that's what we're calling it. All sorts of things. um,
Gotcha.
exactly. It's like such a the nomenclature is very well established, but the origins of it are not well backed by history. So
I love it.
For all of these things, or for the majority of these things, we're making like no water meads. Some people call them like super fruit meads, where we're taking just the fruit or the juice, adding honey, sometimes adding yeast. Depending on the particular processes, will like the ciders, the apple based things. We don't really need to add yeast. We do add yeast nutrient, which is basically just yeast hulls, so boiled yeast, uh,
Hmm.
to make sure that,
Got it.
because you're
Yeah.
adding so much extra sugar that you need to add nitrogen. That the fruit, if you were doing just a
Right.
100% fruit product, you wouldn't have that
Right.
situation. That particular one,
Right.
we got some cherries from Champlain orchards,
Yep.
Montmorency cherries,
Yep.
and went with that. And at the same time, we were trialing the choke cherries for a smaller batch of mead to see if they'd turn out all right, because we hadn't worked with them before and we didn't want to, just go all out. This year, we will be going all out on the choke cherries. Um, Turns out the choke cherries smelled more like cherry than the Montmorencys. So we blended them together, back sweetened a little bit with honey, waited until the yeast petered out, which is typically the one that I use, typically around 14%, and bottled it up. I mean, the
It's quite interesting.
it's like an Amaro almost.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh
it's like
wow.
that one. I definitely recommend with some seltzer, not necessarily for like the bitterness, no, for the sweetness, but for how bitter it is. It's like it
I
needs
gotcha.
needs to be cut down a little
Yeah.
bit.
It's
Yeah.
okay. Now, well, let me ask you once more about this 2021
Oh
wild
yes.
fermented petite pearl. So this is the one that you're kind of excited about. So in other words, you guys really didn't
No.
add anything to this. This is grapes and that's
Grapes
it,
in the bottle.
bottled.
We may. I believe
And
I put a little bit of yeast nutrient in it. Okay, but that would be the only
okay,
thing we put in it,
just
and it was organic, so
gotcha.
fermento, and but that was it. And
Right. Now, do they make
oh
you
yeah,
list that? I know some organics. Okay, so this you
Yeah,
have
oh
to
not on
yeah,
list
on the
ingredients
bottle.
because
For
of
the TTB,
yep.
we have
On the
to list ingredients.
not for the TTB. It's for the organic certification. The TTB really doesn't care. Yeah, only the meads. The meads we have to give them formulas and all that. So
Yep, you're right.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I go through that. I mean, so I work with organic vineyards, but not I don't have an organic certified winery. So the only way I can say anything is by doing an ingredients list. I mean, which we want to give anyway, just for transparency's sake. Just be like, here's what we do. We're not trying to hide anything. Very
hmm
little things are added. Um, but it's also an opportunity to say organic grapes
Yeah.
is one of the
did
ingredients.
you use any
Um,
yeast nutrient,
so
Adam, at
that's
all?
I
Huh.
haven't yet. No, so far been very fortunate not to have sort of stuck fermentation or really any off
Yeah.
reductive aromas develop. Everything's been a wild ferment, no, yeah,
Yeah.
no nutrients. Having said that, and that's what I was getting at with the sparklers. We did use yeast and sugar, similar to you for our tirage. We just wanted to guarantee. I mean, we're also like because we made such a small amount. I think that's where you really expose yourself. I think if you guys get to the point where you're working with a ton or more of a single grape, you might not have as much issue with the wild ferment or the VA that development. I mean, you might. I mean, it's still a possibility depending
hmm
on a lot of other factors, but seems like you just have less oxygen exposure the greater the volume, and I think that's a big part of me working in a small volume is I just wanted the yeast so that I didn't have that issue. Actually, I tried without yeast and I started smelling the ethyl acetate and I was like, don't want that to
hmm
happen, so I added some yeast and sugar. And then so we had a nice fermenting bottle, and we tested it, just a couple weeks after tirage and just to make sure everything was going well. Yeah, beautiful, nice nice creamy
Yep.
bubbles already, beautiful color. And then the smell, though, had all of that reductive stuff that gets trapped in the bottle and doesn't blow off because you're doing an in-bottle fermentation. And I was like, oh no, like this is horrible. Oh no, no, no. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it's like, if I notice it, it's less than
Huh.
pleasant, that's all. It's like, oh, you want fruity or more traditional smells
Sure.
for your sparkling wine. So we didn't open anymore, and that's when I learned that that's what the yeast, the aging on lees does. Like it just reabsorbs all that, all those reductive aromas, and then when you disgorge, you have this beautiful smelling, classically smelling champagne style sparkling wine. And yeah, so I that was a big lesson for me. It was just like I was stressing, and then I was like, oh well, let the process
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
what it's supposed to do,
I made a
and it worked out
separate
beautifully.
batch of champagne because my son Andrew is getting married in a couple weeks, and my other son Christopher, he's getting married in a couple months. And so I took all of the Swinson White and all of the Louis Swinson, and I just mixed those and made a champagne, and it was smelled something was off,
It
and I'm
smells like
just
farts.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
It's
wasn't
sulfury, eggy
Yeah, that's
aromas.
it.
Yeah.
That's the smell.
wasn't great, but I said whatever. I've got all this wine, and I need it. I don't need it, but I was hoping to use it for these weddings. Anyway, I went ahead and bottled it and aged it and so on. And we tasted it, I don't know, maybe a month ago now. And we're like, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That is the nice thing. I think there's a couple different kinds of reduction. Like when you're in a barrel that you've just never racked, you can get those, just the absence of oxygen aromas that are more like flinty, matchsticky kind
Yeah.
of things that aren't, you don't have the fruit, like they sort of conceal the fruity and floral and perfuming notes that you're expecting, but they aren't, yeah, the sewage smell. And then there's the sewage smell, which I think like a lot of times you have to give it air at that point just to let that blow off, or if it's in like a sparkling wine, you have to let those yeast
Yeah,
do the trick
actually, I
and
think what I did
reabsorb that.
before I bottled it, I had it, I just, racked it off, and then I had it in a container that I was going to mix it in, mix it up with, and I believe I uh, bubbled nitrogen through it for an hour or two beforehand,
There you
and then I
go.
bottled it. So
Yep.
that may have helped too to get rid of some of those aromas.
We've
There you
we've
go. That
had
makes a lot of
luck
sense.
with
That's a
that
good
with
trick.
low levels of ethyl acetate as well. Of just like let's throw some nitrogen through it, see if it brings it
Really?
below uh perceptual yeah, below the perceptual
Right.
threshold.
Yeah. The level of the
Yeah.
threshold of perception. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, and it worked.
I think it's that plus aging plus all sorts of things, but it'll reduce the amount of ethyl acetate for sure. It'll just pull that. It's
Okay. Yeah. I thought you were going to say you like racked it. I'm like, well, that would probably not. I would have. I mean, my thought would be no, like that would be bad. But yeah, bubbling nitrogen. So you're not exposing it to
Right.
oxygen, but you are giving it air. Like
Yeah,
you're
you can
aerating it
probably
technically. But
bubble carbon
yeah.
dioxide through it too. It's just we use in the winery when we're topping, like making sure we're reducing oxygen exposure, which is really important when you're not using any sulfites. So you want to like riding this fine line
Yeah.
of like
Absolutely.
you don't want too little, or else you'll get those reductive like flinty aromas you were talking about. But if you get too
Right.
much, you'll start getting cardboard, which is also not great.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, well, the reductive, I mean, the good thing about the sort of flinty matchstick ones is they do those, just as it's inescapable that the wine is going to microoxygenate over time, whether it's in barrel or in bottle, those will ultimately go away. It just gives that wine a little more ageability in a nice way, I think sometimes. So it
Yeah.
just kind of depends on what you're going for. Like if you want it to be fresh and ready to go, yeah, maybe rack it real quick and it'll be ready to go, or maybe just bottling will give it enough air at that point, like it's sort of like I almost think of it as a protective layer of reduction at
I
that
mean,
point.
like a Petit Pearl, we
Yeah.
do barrel age that. But then when we go to bottle it, we do put a little argon in the bottle right before we cork it, just to,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
so
to
there's no
spare it.
oxygen in the bottle. So
Yeah.
I'm always really trying to protect the
Yeah.
wine from oxygen
Oh,
at
okay.
all cost.
That's why we don't make
Yes.
still
Yeah.
whites,
Yeah.
because
Ah. Why? Because you end up with
yes,
browns,
because
or
they don't have
yeah.
the tannin to protect them from the oxygen.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. I so is there a way to, I mean, this is a really good discussion. I know we're getting kind of technical, but I've heard, I haven't explored a zero sulfur white. But I've heard that you can sort of oxidize the juice and then ferment it, and all the brown sort of falls out, and then it's
Hmm.
stable at that point.
I so
Anyway,
I know
maybe we'll
that
have to look into it. I guess we're all speculating.
Ellison Estate Vineyard in Vermont, they are on their second year of getting their organic certification. They make a still white. It's pretty good. I'm not 100% sure how they make it. I'm sure it's possible.
Okay.
And like the two routes have to
Yeah.
be either you're using like a oxygen protective cap instead of a cork, and you're being
Mhm.
very, very careful throughout the process to protect from oxygenation, or something like you're describing. I think it's
They
any other.
don't, Andrew, they don't use any sulfites at all?
No, they do not.
Huh.
Not that when I visited them,
Okay.
that was the impression that I got. Their goal is to be fully organic certified, similar to us.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, you could be fully organic certified and just say made with organic grapes, which would allow you to add up to 100
Yeah.
parts per million. Like if they're not interested in saying organic wine, then they could
I
get away with
think they're
adding it.
interested in saying organic wine in the conversations that I had with this person.
Could you do both? I mean, if you guys decide you wanted to make a white
Yep.
and you
It's
just
all
wanted to, because of that, you could add sulfates, and then just on that
Sure.
one you could say made with organic grapes, and your other ones you could say organic. Okay. Like you have that flexibility. I didn't know
No,
what
Yeah.
the
they're
certification
fine. You just
restrictions were
can't,
there.
process things organic and non-organic at the same time, and you have to make sure you sanitize all the equipment in
Got it.
between, and have to have a log and keep track of whatever.
Got it.
You know,
Yeah.
like processes associated with
Got it.
like what
Yeah,
you're.
that makes sense.
So you have to rinse it 3 times in between. So the mead, since they're not organic because of the honey, like necessarily not
Right.
organic because of the honey, anything that's being used on that has to go through like a thorough process of rinsing everything out and cleaning it with, it's like rinse water, star sand, more rinse water. What's the other? Be Bright,
Yeah.
like 3 more rinses at the end, to make
Wow.
sure there's
Wow.
none of
Okay.
that non-organic stuff.
No
Yeah.
residual whatsoever. Gosh, I know some winemakers that aren't that cleanly when it comes to, prepping for a new vintage.
Well, coming from a chef background, sanitation's real big anyway with me, and so it's easy to,
Yeah.
okay.
It's like in the beer industry. It's like if you're gonna get into it, you should really like cleaning things.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to say that, like, winemaking is,
Yeah.
80% cleaning. And now in LA, the other 20% is truck driving. Or driving U-Hauls. So I literally never touch grapes. It's just I'm cleaning or driving a truck. Um, no, totally not true. But it is a lot of cleaning, and you guys have been great. I think it's just awesome to know that you guys are doing that. I want people to know how you're doing it, and I think people are going to be excited. I mean, I'm excited to try, but I think we're going to be even more excited when we taste this stuff. I think, I just, yeah, I mean, I have a not too concealed mission to promote the kind of thing that you guys are doing, and I think finding grapes like Petit Pearl and things like that really can, go toe to toe with a vinifera wine, in terms of, blind tasting people and them loving it, and then pulling back the reveal, like the old whatever, I don't know, like Sanka commercial or whatever it was, the Folgers commercial.
Well, I have entered that
That's
Petit
going way
Pearl in the Big E wine competition, along with our apple pear mead. So I'm hoping that it does well. We'll see. So we'll know in August.
Fantastic.
So
yeah, well, you've done well in other things that you've entered your other wines in as well, and I guess my question for you, Doug, is how's
oh my
retirement
God.
going?
Well, no,
Do you feel retired?
I've been so busy with things, around here. But that's the whole idea. I want to keep busy. I'm
Right.
still,
Yeah,
like today,
absolutely.
every day I make sure I do something, some kind of exercise. If like when I spray, I use a backpack sprayer. That's enough exercise for the day.
Yeah.
For sure. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
16 p.m.
And so today I actually rode my bike into town to drop off a package to mail. So that was my exercise. And other days I'm going mushroom hunting. So retirement's
Ooh,
good.
yeah. Nice. Nice. I think I got an alert about that package that you
Very
mailed.
possible.
Is that
yes.
possible? Okay. Well, you guys, thanks so much. I've kept you from your evening imbibement too long, so I really appreciate you taking the time on a Friday night, like I said, to do this and to talk about what you're doing. It's really awesome to know that you're out there.
Great.
I can't wait to try your stuff. Thank you, and please shout out your website and ways that you'd like people to get to know you better.
MontpelierVineyards.com. It's if you search Montpelier wine on Google, it's the one. It turned out to be a search engine optimized name. We didn't.
Just like the
Yes.
capital of Vermont, you mean?
And
Okay, cool.
we're Vermont Organic Wine on Instagram, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Vermont Organic Wine.
Yeah. If you go to the website,
Fantastic. And you guys do tastings? Do you guys do tastings by appointment?
Right now we're not. We're just so busy. I am going to open it
Got
up
it.
to let people come to tour the vineyard. So if they want to come see what's
Okay.
going on at the vineyard, I'm thinking next year we're going to have an outdoor tasting room that we're going to build. But this year, with all that's going on, we just
Weddings.
weddings especially. Yeah.
Congratulations.
We do frequently do like in-store tastings with all of our stuff.
Yep.
And that is on
I
the
gotcha.
website.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you post stuff on Instagram when you have an event like that
Oh, yeah.
for anybody locally or within striking distance? Okay, great. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
Great.
This has been awesome.
Thanks, Adam.
Have a great night. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And if you did, please do leave a review for the Organic Wine Podcast. It helps a lot, and we want to get the word out to as many people as we can, which your review will help do. Thanks so much.